Meet Shin Chiho, a high school student who's had some rough teenage years. For starters, he's a loner without a lot of friends. Even before he joined high school, he was a victim of bullying. This heavily affected his academics as he finds himself in peril after failing the university entrance exam. He looks at his classmates, all of whom were talking about where they've enrolled and how exciting life as a college student will be like, and trust me, it's not actually as exciting as you think it would be. Shin doesn't plan to give up soon, though. He aims to try again next year. His crush, Lin, stands across from him, more vibrant than usual as her friends congratulate her. She has made it into Myeong-in University and is the first person to do so in the school. Shin has a big crush on Lin, which makes me think he is sure delusional. Of all the girls he could have looked at, bro aimed for the sky itself and beyond. He's just a big dreamer. This crush of his goes all the way back to elementary school, so what I understand is that this guy's been just looking at her for the past 12 years. Makes sense. That's relatable. He's written her a letter and finally dares to give it to her. Before he approaches her, Hong here gets in the way and he hides under the bench to avoid her. She's actively looking around for the dweeb and asks him what he's doing under there. Ju Hong is the biggest bully in school, and I guess we know who her main victim is. She's been treating Shin like her personal maid for the past 12 years, and things haven't really changed, even at the end of high school. She steals the love letter from his hands. He couldn't hide it. Your bully is literally out there searching for you. At least you have enough sense to hide something as sensitive as a love letter. But it didn't even matter. He pleads with her to not open it, but his plea is met with a hard slap, which shuts them up. Lin tries to defuse the situation, but all she says is, "Come on, Hong." Great help. Before she can open the letter, her juniors come crashing with eggs and flour to congratulate her graduation. She pulls Shin in to protect her, and if the slap wasn't embarrassing enough, he's now covered in egg. Not only does she have him take all that, but he also falls down quite hard, only for her to accuse him of peeking up Lin's skirt. And while all of this is happening, all Shin can think of is what a failure he is, having achieved nothing for the past 18 years. It was 12, then 18. 4 years later, it'll be the same. Instead, he'll be cursing the number 22. 3 months have passed since graduation, and Shin has been taking up prep classes and is mostly busy with his cleaning duties. Things aren't going entirely terrible for him, though. He gets his fair share of female contact. It's mostly a simple greeting, but that's the most Shin could ask for, really. Oh, and Ju Hong is here, too. How is she everywhere? Oh, and she sure loves to slap this guy's face a lot. It's his birthday, so she's there to give him a present, which is fracking nothing. Oh, no, hold on here. I guess technically she's giving him the gift of spreading rumors about what a pervert he is. He did take up the prep center class knowing that Hong was there, so it's on him to some degree. He returns home to see that his mom had gone to a gathering of quack doctors, totally unaware that it's her son's birthday. Even so, Shin gets down to pray like a good boy, despite thinking that all of his prayers go unanswered. It's kind of sad when you see that all this guy wants is for God to make his life a little happier. He decides to lie down beside the deities and dozes off. Exactly at 12 a.m., though. Bizarre rays of light begin to engulf his body as Shin starts to have some suspicious dreams about his adventures with Hong. He's entirely unaware of all the light showering him in his sleep. He feels a severe toothache the next morning, which he thinks is for being slapped so hard by Hong. On his way to class, he sees Hong and Lin walking together. He's happy to see one of them and wishes the other simply didn't exist at all. They walk past him and Lin is considerate enough to notice that it is Shin. Hong tells her that they shouldn't care because he's a big fat loser. Lin turns around to ask him if he was going to the prep center. He nods but doesn't realize that he was walking the other way. He tries to turn around but trips on a stone and falls on top of Lin. Man, this is just his life, isn't it? It's just not his day to day, or any day, really. Of course, Hong got her cue to absolutely destroy the guy, and she starts by kicking him away from her. She continues the assault even when Lin asks her to stop. Man, can't you just give him the slap and let him be? Hold on, something just happened. Her slap summoned some crackling energy throughout her hand, and Shin doesn't feel any pain at all. Hong's hand is messed up. She screams in pain, feeling as if she'd just been zapped by electricity. So like a big dum-dum brain, she tries to continue her assault, but Lin takes her away for the day. Shin's not able to process what the frick just happened. He thinks he might have just leveled up from getting beat up so often. Like a Super Saiyan. Hong decides to stay behind after class. Her expression seems mostly malicious, and Shin starts to worry. She makes an excuse to her friends, lying about being sick, and poor Shin hears this and prays that her ill condition gets bad enough to keep her bedridden. She then texts him to meet her at the playground after his cleaning duties. So much for wishing her to be sick. She also asks him to get a ton of stuff for her, none of which is going to be paid by her. I mean, why would it? This bullying is going much deeper with every passing page. Within the list of things that she wants, she mentions condoms. No. Bullying him is enough. Let's not stray further from that route. out. I'm not liking the course of where this is going. Poor Shin wonders if she finally got a boyfriend or something, completely clueless to the fact that his well-being could be in grave danger. He gets what she asked of him and calls her out and into the playground. He finds her sitting under a structure in a particularly off mood. He leaves her things beside her and starts to take a stand for himself. And she couldn't care less about what he was saying as she throws him against a wall. Shin starts to apologize before he notices that Hong's face is severely red and she's drooling profusely. And then it happens. She pulls his shirt off and starts to heal his tooth with her own. This guy calls out her name at least 3 times. It does nothing to push her back or resist. He's like, Hong. And that's it. That's all he does to save himself. Hong explains that ever since she got zapped by him in the morning, her body has been strange. By strange, she means she wants to be zapped again. Didn't know she was into that. Oh, nope. Except by something else. And somewhere else. She did her best to hold it back all day, but is now beyond her control. She has to bully him again in a very different manner. He will be the one slapping, just not with his hands. Shin is still very confused about all this. He gets a feeling that it could be a trap to get a photo of him or something and drive him insane, like blackmail. Despite all of these rational thoughts, his body takes no rational action whatsoever. He does ask her to stop before getting yet another slap, followed by yet another zap. The same thing happens. Someone's not good at pattern recognition. Her hand glows. He doesn't feel any pain, and the heat just keeps on a-turning. She wants him to take over despite literally forcing him to do it. Shin, who probably hasn't even touched himself till now, starts to take a good grasp of the situation. Not only does he like what he's seeing, but of all of the people in the world, Hong looks pretty to him in that state. He takes good notes of her bodily features, especially the part where everything is extra tender. Hong notices his natural reactions, and little Shin is very happy about the situation. She was not going to let little Shin hang like that. Well, it's not hanging. Well, you get the point though, right? I don't need to spell everything out for you. Look, the condoms are finally up for some action, but Shin has no idea how they work. She snatches them away from his hands and gives him a practical session of sex education. And I really want to see the fricker in the comment section that's like, oh, but this may be like a borderline hentai, but the plot of this one is really where it's at. Brother, this is the 2nd chapter and we're already getting down to business. Clearly you're not watching this for the plot. Well, you are, but not even High School DxD was this fast. Chapter 3 takes off and Shin takes a moment to reflect on how his life has been up to this point. And let me be the first one to tell you that it's been pretty frickin' awful. Hong is also the person to blame for most of how bad his life is. So, of course, my guy finds it hard to believe that she'll be out here making sure his wardrobe malfunctions. She now has the prize in her hands and it goes to where it belongs, quote unquote. Shin tries to hold a conversation with her, but is told to keep his mouth shut and let her do her thing, or his thing in this context. I guess it was the first time Hong saw one up close and so raw. She finds it hard to believe how hard it can be. Maybe she should ask him to slap her with it or something. Might give her a perspective on just how hard things can be. She does make sure to tell him that she's about to do it, which is like the 3rd time that she said it already. Frick me, if you're going to do it, get it over with. She sits up a little and it doesn't take long for Shin to win in his life for a whole record-breaking 1 minute. Hong can finally feel what it's like to be the one on the receiving end of an assault, although Shin isn't really doing much here. He starts to feel weirdly turned on over the fact that she is his bully, and this just keeps getting worse. It makes the experience better somehow, though. Yeah, I have the same disturbed expression as you guys right now. Don't worry. Unless you're into it. And if you are, I wish I could judge you. And I am! Shin Boy really does step up here. He puts her down carefully and begins to charge with much force. And Hong ain't ready to take on all this force, but I'm sure it doesn't even matter at this point. This is also the first time Hong realizes that Shin is actually a lot stronger than she is by some miracle. Keep going, my boy. You're buying your ticket out of the bullying life. Some students arrive at the park, and upon hearing their voices, Hong gets nervous and clenches her legs. The consequences of this little act are heavy on Shin, who at this point is barely hanging on. He reaches his limit, and the boys can literally hear Shin unloading his frustrations in his bully. The dudes outside talk about going in to investigate. That's when Shin decides to get the frick hell out of Dodge and defuse the situation and buy her some time to get dressed. He doesn't say much and tells him to meet her again tomorrow, so there is a tomorrow. You've just punched your ticket out of the sad man's life. Somehow. How did this happen? Instead of Shin, she gets out and scares the boys off. I guess Shin is not her only victim. He returns home and has to constantly remind himself that he's not inside a dream. Or is he? He notices that the altar that he prayed to is glowing and one of the scrolls is lit up too. It makes him think even harder about what's real and what's not. He looks at the mirror and notices a big hand mark on his face. Surprisingly, he's the only one who can see the mark. Not even doctors can make sense of what he's seeing or saying. He gives them all details about how it doesn't hurt and that his altar has been glowing lately. Calm down, boy. They might take you to a mental ward. They did it to me when I said that I recap anime for a living. Well, actually, frick, they didn't do that, but he had to get admitted nonetheless. The doctors explained to him that he's seeing things due to heavy stress. And he was lucky to be admitted there for free thanks to his mom, who is working in the medical field somehow. She's also basically a celebrity around the block. He peeks out of his bed to notice that the nurse is very devoted and serious about her work. She goes down all the way to treat an elderly patient. Holy frick. Shin carefully watches her work, although I don't understand why he's blushing behind her back. What is behind her back, I wonder? She senses someone staring at her, and Shin barely manages to avoid getting caught. Someone pulls away his curtains, and oh my, who is this young It's his mom! That's his mom! Well, now I know why all the elderly men are so nice to him. I'm pretty sure they have, or at least have tried to have good relations with her. She doesn't waste time asking him about the altar that's been glowing. He carefully explains all the details, including being slapped by someone. She catches on to it and asks him if that someone is the eldest daughter of the Jew family. She then talks about how he's destined to have a luxurious life full of wealth and joy. In fact, his fate was so bright that his body couldn't handle all the pleasures he was promised. As such, she broke his luck into pieces and gave it to the children of a neighboring family who were very much in need of it. She did save his life and the life of those kids. I suppose one of those kids was Hong, and after that fate-driven contact with her, he got a great chunk of his luck back. She even confirms it. Hong was supposed to die young as a child, but turned out to be big and strong thanks to getting part of his energy. It isn't that simple though. Residual energy remains inside Hong, and it begins to drive her crazy because it wants to return back to the original body. There's so much. Brother, what? In simple words, Hong will be very hungry for his dong for as long as his energy is inside her. The solution is also something that has to do with the process of being inside her. How weird is that? Now, Hong isn't having the best time of her life as she struggles to put her mind straight. It is actually the best time if you look at it from a primal perspective, but the question is, why would you do something like that, you horny fricker? She curses Shin for cursing her with a sussy spell while constantly regretting the fact that she let Shin be one to start her farming journey. I mean, you did take his experience too, so I don't really understand how he's the only one at fault here. Despite all these complaints, she cannot deny that the moment was very unique, to say the least. You could say that again. So unique that her hands start to glide down over her thoughts. It really took just a small thought for her to almost dehydrate herself there. Shin's curse sure is powerful. Meanwhile, Shin's mother is giving him lessons on how he's going to live the Casanova life soon. Mama insists on knowing the details about his contact with Hong, but of course Shin is at no cost going to share it with her. As soon as she leaves, Hong dashes her way inside the hospital. She somehow knows which bed Shin is in, just magically. Well, yeah, I guess that makes sense then. Oh, she's plenty mad about his ignorance. She asks him why he hasn't been receiving calls. Is this guy really ghosting her after all that? Look at my boy go. He starts to think that things haven't changed even after their fateful encounter. Although Hong's face is still red and her lips look as thirsty as ever. She's not very sure of what she wants to say. Being a bully was certainly not on the list. However, Shin was not going to hold back. He starts to take a stand once again, making it clear to her that she can't bully him. Oh, Shin boy really got wild up here. He just sat off and stormed in rage, leaving the poor girl drooling over literally freaking nothing. He locked himself inside the restroom, unable to process what he had just done. He did something heroic, I guess, in all honesty. Of course, said heroism was not going to last forever. Hong blasts the door open and enters the restroom with him. He immediately loses all composure and starts to apologize, only for her to do the same thing as last time. Only for her to do the exact same thing. She starts to be honest with him and talks about how she was there to discuss last night. Hong knows enough to deduce that it all started after she slapped him the other day. She tells him about her condition, how she's in heat all the time. Instead of providing her with answers or a temporary solution, Slick Shin entices her to slap him once again. Boy. He makes it seem as if she's confirming her doubts about the slap. And of course, Hong plays right into his cheeks and whacks him hard. Her slap is not nearly as hard as he is. And they're already going at it. Or at least she's making sure the fountain flows right into her mouth immediately. She continues to keep Shin stimulated and going. When you gotta drink, you gotta drink. Frick! The boy once again cannot believe his eyes, although he certainly can feel it. He tries to pull himself away from her, but she follows his footsteps and is latched onto him like a fracking leech. There was nowhere else to go other than the toilet seat, and he has given her an even better position for further exploration. Hong has had enough lunch for the day and is straight to the main course. She sits on the preoccupied toilet seat and gets things inside of her instead of getting them out. The things I have to say for the sake of comedy and monetization. Shin warns her that that they have no protection, but Hong looks like she's ready to bully a new generation of them. Well, she does warn him that he'll die if he finishes where he shouldn't. Hong can barely hold herself together. In her own words, it just keeps getting better and better. And for me, it keeps getting worse and worse. A patient tries to open the restroom and finds it weird that it's locked. For some reason, this nurse thinks that someone locked it from the inside and searches for the keys. So do y'all just not let people mind their own business inside there? What if someone's actually just taking the fattest dump of their life, caught in this awkward position inside a random restroom in some random hospital, and they just want to pass a duke? Of course, that's not what's happening here. Two frickers are having sex. But still, lucky for them, the nurse doesn't find the keys, and the patient is sent somewhere else. This old man then talks about how someone could be attempting self-harm inside there, which is the most random thing I've ever heard. Not really, actually. Yeah, never mind. He must have a lot of experience with that. But nah, it's just two frickers having sex. The nurse is convinced enough to start banging on the door. She asks the person inside to answer her. But Hong wasn't gonna stop at any cost. She was there to get satisfied and nothing was going to take that away from her. He does tell her that they need to finish what they started or else she'll come running to him every day wanting more and more. Good thing our man Shin is so understanding. He stands up, makes sure Hong gets what she signed up for, and they continue to keep it up. Meanwhile, the people outside have already contacted a locksmith and whatnot, and they sure want to know what's inside that fracking door. Shin has nowhere else to relieve himself, and he frantically takes it out and showers Hong's face with vitamin D. As for how they escaped the situation, Hong literally covered her face with a hood and made a run for it. As for Shin, everyone knows that he was the one doing all the poking in there. Apparently, he's been hiding in the hospital room ever since that little incident. It even gets worse when you realize that his mother is a doctor at that same hospital. She's probably heard the rumors about her son being a feral fracking animal. Shin earning reputation inside the hospital. Old men look at him with a mischievous expression as if he's some kind of maniac, which I mean he is. Who does that inside of a hospital? They give him the nickname Sex Machine, and all he wants to do is get better and get discharged as soon as he can. As if that wasn't enough, he gets into a little accident with a female doctor as she falls on top of him, fracking Two Love Rue style. Her hands come into contact with his body and it starts to glow. Not the same way it happened with Hong, but Shin notices it nonetheless. He says he's fine, but the doctor can't help but feel bad about how she need his morning wood back to sleep. The female doctor is there to tend to other patients, especially older males. She's not very confident in her advice and isn't assertive enough to make them obey. She's also Shin's primary doctor, and he can't help but notice that she too is young and probably his age. They ask him to help them with the patient, but the old man doesn't want anything to do with the sex machine. He decides to help anyway and finds his head used as a support for the doctor's breasts. He can't focus, man. You're helping a patient. You can't start calculating the weight of extra mass on your head. There was enough contact between them, and this time Shin's hands are the ones that start to glow. The doctor sees this and starts to panic if he got hurt during the process. Oh, I'm sure he did. Have you seen the size of your bust? That'll knock anyone out cold. But joke's on you, I'm into that. He says that there's something wrong with his hands, although they seem pretty normal to the doctor. This is when Shin realizes that this doctor is girl number 2. One of the many people to have his energy inside of her. How did it get there? I don't know. He immediately calls his mother and tells her that a doctor by the name of Yeon Jiwon I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting that name, is the second girl, and she's now tending to him. His mom recognizes her because of course she does. Who does this woman not know? She also mentions that Jiwon received the smallest portion of his energy, so she won't feel a great amount of attraction or discomfort. He starts to analyze where the mark is this time. Since both of his hands are glowing, he deduces that it must be a body part that comes in pairs. Shoulders, knees, or he gets some pretty wild ideas about how one could be aroused through shoulders or knees, and even then, he doesn't think once that it could be the opai. His mind does take him as far as the tookish, but he has to go further and above in every literal sense. Holy frick! Finally does he get enough sense to think that it might be up top. It also makes sense because her breast size is a lot larger than you'd see in most girls. Even in a world like theirs where the silicone business is basically non-existent, after all, everyone's at least a D. While he lies in his bed thinking about all these possibilities, Jiwon is right in front of him dealing with the old man and his vomit. Relatable. He finally gets a private appointment in her office, especially when she had run out of clothes to wear and had to resort to a skirt. That is not just run to the store or buy some scrubs, fricker. She gives him a brief description of how
how his body reports have been, and everything seems fine. Shin, on the other hand, can't take his hands off his head. He's in constant pain. It's mostly because he's trying to figure out just where he should touch her and how he should go about it. You can't just reach in head first, man. There's an order to these things. The rest of the areas are fine, but the top-down curves are where it gets tricky.
She asks if his head is all right. Despite giving an optimistic answer to her, she wants to know if he has trouble with being erect. How does his headache relate to erectile dysfunction? Or just a woman already under his voodoo hoodoo moodoo charm? He's embarrassed and asks her how his penis has anything to do with it, and she clarifies that they'd given him antidepressants the other day, and it could have such side effects. What type of antidepressant? She wants to run just one more test in case something bad happens, so Shin lies down on the bed at her request. She bends over to find the right equipment, and Shin sees it. 2 opportunities right in front of him, and all he has to do is take hold of them. He tries to fight his inner demons, but his hands say otherwise. Chill out, bro, it's gonna cause you some problems. Turns back before he can steal a feel, and things turn up quite fast when she pulls down his pants and whips out his sword. In her own nerd words, she's now going to perform a penile ultrasound on him, which will somehow result in sex. And of course, my man's embarrassed to say the least, but rolls with it nonetheless because, sucky wucky time. All while he still wonders where her mark is. Brother! The process is very specific, and she even uses a device that vibrates right on his nether region. Instead of thinking about how professional she is about all this, he can't help but feel the warmth of her hands and the motion of her fingers. The motion of the ocean, if one nerd might say. She doesn't see anything wrong, which makes her even more concerned, as he could have more serious, hidden issues. She asks him if he can feel her hands on his little one, which he can, but then Shin pulls the Ultra Giga Chad move. He tells her that he can't quite feel her. Boy! She continues to stimulate him, and he continues to lie about it. She thinks about changing his prescription. Ji-won really wants to make sure he feels something because it's important, so she continues to stroke harder. It's only going to end one way, and Shin ends up with a huge leak. It gets all over her dress, and the doctor inside of her is glad to see he can still ejaculate. As if she was already short on clothes, she now has to change from this skirt too. She heads to the changing room and starts to undress. Shin has followed her all the way over there for some reason, and he's right there in the shadows, stalking her like a predator does its prey. Wait, that sounds awfully wrong, but I'm not wrong! He is there though, and they have that hentai protagonist shade on his face, so I'm sure he isn't there to say his thanks only. He embraces her from behind while she's changing, and Ji-won is shocked to see him there. Just shocked! You just start asking some serious questions! He literally just popped out of the shadows and grabbed you from behind! You could take that out of context anywhere and that would be wrong. Shin explains that the ejaculation was very forced and that he's gone limp again and needs her help once again. Yo, someone get this man. Mom! Where'd you go? He begins to blackmail her, talking about how his life is going to be without sex anymore. Oh no. You poor animal. Of course, he was eventually leading this conversation to the drugs that she had talked about earlier. He tells her that perhaps she was right about the drugs and now she has to take responsibility for his limp state. That is not how that works. Sue her or something. She doesn't even try to put up a debate and agrees with his bafflingly stupid opinion. She wants to know what she can do to help. There's literally only one thing you can do. He doesn't even waste time telling her what he wants. He's no longer limp. There you go. You solved his problem. All right, leave. Oh, she can feel it between her legs. That was immediate. The man is starting to run his hands all over her, and he still dares to tell her that it's all procedure. He tells her this procedure? She's just curing his penis back to normal health. Thank you so much. At this point, Ji-won is weak. Already! And he hasn't even entered the chat yet, if you get what I mean. She feels as if she's going to give in before he can even awaken properly. Well, I guess he didn't even need to enter the chat. It's yet another waste of her clothes, this time the underwear. She expects him to be done after that, but Shin still hasn't accomplished his mission yet, as he gets his hands right to the mark. He disagrees and wants to touch her breasts to make things feel right, whatever that means. Wait, what? Why does she suddenly wake up in bed? Where's the sexy time? Where is he? What happened? She finds herself awake in her bed, wondering if that was all a dream. I guess he was right about the mark after all. Man, wow, so got away with that scot-free. Shin is also foreign to everything that had just happened. He's still wondering about how he's going to touch her mark. He notices her walking the hospital floor, and the change in her appearance isn't helping him resist her any less. In fact, all the other male employees and patients can't take their eyes off her either. Why is this happening? Despite the change, her coat is still tucked inside her skirt, still is as clumsy, and she still can't stop thinking about who was trying to touch her in her dreams. All she remembers is that it was a patient. Shin greets her, and as soon as he does,
does, she covers half his face with her hand. He has a close resemblance, but she still thinks that it can't be him. Shin untucks her coat without letting her know, and Anna, a nurse, sees him doing that. She later meets up with Ji-won and tells her that Shin might be a pervert. Maybe. It's just about time he tried to untuck her coat, which Anna saw as his attempt to touch Ji-won's butt. Ji-won is dumbfounded over why he would try to do that, and Anna has to tell her just how many men drool over those cheeks. To make matters worse, Anna lets in the hospital's secret about how Shin was in a bathroom with a woman. Oh! The nurses, including herself, have no hard evidence against him, so they want him to voluntarily go back home. Ji-won then starts to think that her dream was a warning that something indecent was about to happen to her, courtesy of Shin. This time, she is sure that he was the guy from her dream. After hearing Anna plead to her like that, Ji-won is more than determined to kick Shin out of the hospital. She takes a vow to get him out no matter what. Some patient named Choi is being escorted to his bed by a bunch of attendants. The nurse asks him if he had taken his drugs properly, and he splurts out a bunch of pills from his mouth. So that would be a no. Meanwhile, Ji-won is already inside Shin's quarters and addresses him as Mr. Pervert. Ooh, critical hit insult. She requests that he leaves the hospital immediately. Shin has absolutely no idea what she's talking about, so it's even more confusing when she says he's been making the nurse uncomfortable with his strange behavior. And according to her, let me look at my notes here. Oh yes, he also had an orgy with 7 women inside the restroom. Did she hit her head on her way to his bed? Then she asks him why he was trying to grab her butt in the morning. Shin realizes that there may have been a grave misunderstanding, although I'm not sure he'll be able to convince anyone of that at this point. All he does is deny these accusations and clarify he tucked her coat. Since nobody has hard evidence against him, they can't really do anything. She has no choice but to film him as long as he's in the hospital, and hopefully that'll prove that he is indeed a hentai. Their conversation is interrupted when the patient Choi enters the room with a nurse in a chokehold and a knife to her throat. He threatens to kill her if they were to come close to him. Looks like this guy forgot to take his antidepressant erect pills. He threatens to kill her if they were to come close to him. Upon hearing his name, Ji-won recalls that Choi is a patient with a delusional disorder. Does that even exist? Or do they just make it up for the sake of the plot? Wouldn't be new. She tries to help, but Shin stops her. She could get herself or the nurse severely injured or dead. They hide under the bed where Shin finally gets his hands on the mark without even realizing it. It's just one hand on one side though. He has to touch both of them to know if he was right. She catches him having the time of his life and starts recording with a phone. It's do or die now, literally. And he decides to go for the other boob too. He's about to touch it, but then Tairi keeps yelling for help. He forces himself up and devises a plan on how to take Choi down. She mentions that she has a taser and all she needs is a distraction. He agrees to be the decoy. She has to get him while he's distracted or Shin could potentially lose his life. This is all to make Shin look like a better person, I have you know. His idea of a distraction was to greet him with a, "Excuse me, sir," but somehow it works. Choi turns to Shin and begins to lead him to where Ji-won is in his blind spot. The motive was to make sure everything was done in stealth, but as soon as Ji-won gets out of the bed, she yells out to Choi and threatens him to stop. Good gracious, not a good plan. Yeah, her idea is a lot different than what they had discussed. She wants him to let Tyree go and take her hostage. What, you're just swapping? Why? Shin thinks this idea could work, which is true only if she had her taser with her, but she left it behind. She turns her back and starts to search for it, and Choi takes the chance and tries to hurt an unguarded Ji-won. He reacts to his instincts and pushes her out of the way. While doing so, he touches both the marks, and a strange light blinds everyone momentarily. Choi still manages to get a deep cut on Shin's wrist, and everyone halts for a moment. And this time, Choi has a weirdly satisfied expression on his face. Oh no. He stands there mesmerized over who knows frackin' what, but he can feel himself floating as if he's in outer space. Ji-won sees him zoning out and takes a chance to put him down with a taser. They then escort Tyree to someplace safe, and Ji-won diverts her attention to Shin, whose cut is not as deep as we thought. He still insists on seeing his arm and sees that there was a concerning amount of bleeding. She takes him to the office and prepares to treat his scratch of a wound, and my boy's not particularly excited to get treated for the wound, but he sure is glad that Ji-won is the one doing it. While she disinfects his wound, he can't help but notice that she's feeling up his entire arm. He thinks he might have been mistaken at first, but it starts to get more and more obvious. Meanwhile, Ji-won is already feeling the effects of Shin's energy. Her whole body is in heat and she feels strange. In her case, it isn't that pleasant as her whole body starts to ache, which originally started with her chest. Go figure. And it doesn't take long for her to give in to temptation. She pulls the curtains and climbs onto his bed, her face covered in drool. Holy frick. She apologizes to him one last time before shoving her mouth into his. Shin is startled at first, but he quickly realizes that he has made contact with the mark.
Yeah, remember that issue about him being limp? Don't gotta worry about that anymore. She's gonna make sure his condition is completely taken care of.
She then slips it into her mouth. Just slips it. That's the word we're gonna use. Just
And Shin can tell the difference between an experienced professional and a high schooler. Ji-won is nothing like Hong. Everything she does makes him feel healed. She's still very professional with her words, addressing him as Mr. Shin. Mr. Pervert's just gone out the window now. Now you're Mr. Hero! As she simultaneously takes her top off. Her womanhood is a lot larger and tender compared to Hong's. This guy really is putting his first-time experience on display here. Have some respect. The final test comes inside, where you will now measure the difficulty and compression, and then compares it to Hong's. He doesn't really make a comparison, but he does give a very scientific rundown of what it feels like. Thanks, buddy. Nice of you to assume the readers are all virgins. Also, TMI. Wait, what did she say? She's never done anything like that before? But she looked like a total pro a while ago. What does that mean? He makes things even harder, or better, depending on the context, by placing his hands on the mark once again. Her body begins to give in, and Shin starts to take control of her soon after. Even in such a heated moment, Shin has the self-control to make sure that his future generation won't be defined there. Ejaculation station is not enough for Shin to convince her that his penis is in a healthy condition, though. She believes that a man of his age must be able to go for a much longer period. She then begins to try other stimulation methods to make sure her patient is in top condition. She wants him to perform to the best of his abilities. Also, is Choi okay? I'm worried about him. Has she really not had any experience? Really? Are you sure? She's going all in with him right now, massaging him with her soft parts to make sure he doesn't remain soft. It's beautiful irony. She is occasionally conscious of what she's doing. She knows it's weird for her, yet she can't stop. He tells her that he's close to yet another release. What do these people drink in his country? They never seem to run out of supply. G1 thinks it would be a waste of another good erection, wants him to safely deposit it and inject her with his serum. Holy frick, man. I thought we were at the end of this, but it looks like Shin has much more to prove. He ain't stopping. She even whispers some really fascinating words to him. He's allowed to go all in because she's a doctor and she knows when it's safe. You literally said you didn't have any experience. This will be the third consecutive chapter that will end with sexy time if they don't stop right now. She's successful in making sure he doesn't waste his erection and ejaculation, though, although taking it in causes her to pass out. Shin later notices that the mark on his hands are gone, yet the ones on his cheeks still remain. Ji-won looks at him from a distance and wonders what is it about him that made her go crazy. Who knows? Despite all this, she feels as if she's taking care of something important and no longer feels any temptation or aching. Hallelujah. He meets up with her before leaving the hospital to say thanks for taking care of him. Seeing that he was going to leave the hospital for good, she asks for his phone and leaves her number there. She wants him to call her if he gets sick or hurt in the future, or limp. They don't really mention that, but we all know that's the main reason. He feels like a complete loser for not having visitors during his time at the hospital, which is also why Ji-won volunteered to be there for him if he visited in the future. This brings us to the end of our hospital arc as Shin is on his way back home at last. He sees a line in front of his gate and wonders what it's about. Inside is his mom, the most pro fortune teller quack doctor in the world. Apparently, a blog article on her went viral and everyone living around the neighborhood hurried their way to book a session with her. Both the mother and son are super happy about it since they're generally a broke duo who don't see big money often somehow, even though she's a celebrity. She then gives him a credit card to pay for his tuition, which should get him out of that stupid job and away from Hong, right? Right! Aside from the credit card, his mother also leaves him a note where she instructs him to find a girl with the last name Yi at Myeon-in University, which is in Seoul. He reaches the university at night and sees that they were in the middle of a festival. Of all the people he can meet there, he comes across Lynn, who, if you remember, is a student here. She's also in a super fancy outfit, so my guy can barely put words together. Lynn is incredibly nice to him and even takes him out to taste the food that she had made. Technically, it's a test to see if their waffles are worthy of selling, but still is progress nonetheless. This guy doesn't even know how that waffle tastes, so she had to feed him by herself. Holy frick, his mother sent him there to have a total date with her, didn't she? The waffle didn't have the best taste in the world. In fact, he thinks it tastes like poison. Her face is super excited when she asks him how it tastes, though, and he doesn't dare tell her it tastes like feet. How do I know what feet taste like? Her food ruins him so badly that he has to take a quick dump before leaving the place. He goes inside to see that a girl is there, half naked with man juice all over her body. Well, that's college for you. He texts the place twice to make sure that he's in the men's room, and yep, it's the men's room. The girl is out of place. It doesn't take long for her to get out and quickly fix herself and her makeup. She looks good as new. As for him, he's supposed to keep this a secret between the two. Shin nods and thinks how lucky that guy was to spray a cute girl like her. In fact, he's so much in all, his nose starts to bleed. It bleeds way harder than it should, and he checks the mirror to see that there is another mark, this time on his nose. He chases her just in time to ask her name. She laughs despite having such a leverage against her. All he wants to know is her name. She finds it amusing and tells him that her name is Yi Rina. Target acquired! I guess he found his third girl, and this is probably the first time he found someone who ain't already a virgin.